President Trump's alleged collusion with Russia has led some congressmen, even from his own party, to call for impeachment. Trump has weathered crises in the past, so what can he do this time to remain commander-in-chief? And the world's #1 Go player has just lost a match against artificial intelligence. Where else can AI impact our lives besides beating us in board games? Welcome to The Point, live from Beijing. I'm Lu Xin. To start off, we would like to give our condolences to the victims of a suicide terror attack at the Manchester Arena Monday night. At least 22 people, including an 8-year-old child, was killed and 59 others wounded in the attack claimed by the Islamic State. The Greater Manchester Police said they have been treating this as a terrorist incident, and they believe that the attack was conducted by one man who had carried an improvised explosive device which he detonated, killing himself and causing this atrocity. A 23-year-old man has been arrested in connection with the attack. Now, the Chinese president reacted swiftly, as he did after the Westminster attack in March, by sending a message of condolence to Queen Elizabeth II. She said the Chinese people stand firmly by the British people. Now, the high number of casualties is indeed shocking, and stampede stemming from panic might have been to blame, but that's exactly the kind of effect a terrorist would want to achieve, using minimum means to inflict maximum danger and terror, hence the choice of a concert. This incident happened right before Donald Trump is about to make his first visit to Europe as president, and right after a concert of an American singer. Given Trump's vows to annihilate the IS group, could this have been a possible reaction to his tough policy? We do not have the answers yet. What is certain is that the more innocent people are targeted, the more firmly the world would be united in the fight against the evil few who carry out such attacks. U.S. President Donald Trump seems unable to shake the alleged Russian collusion of him ever since he took office. He's accused of sharing highly sensitive information with the Russian foreign minister and the Russian ambassador to the U.S. during a meeting in the Oval Office. He's also accused of potential obstruction of justice when he fired FBI Director James Comey, who was in the middle of an investigation of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Now, there are Democratic and even Republican congressmen who are calling for Trump's impeachment. Will he be impeached? Where are all these Trump scandals coming from? Joining me today for the discussion is Rick Dunham, former president of the National Press Club in Washington, Laura Schwartz, a former advisor to President Clinton, and Professor Keith Whittington, professor of politics at Princeton University. Welcome to all of you. And Rick, let me ask you first. You cover the entire Clinton scandal. Where are we at this moment, and what exactly is this process called impeachment?
Well, impeachment is a complicated and a long process. It's at least 4 steps. The first step is the House Judiciary Committee has to draw up and then debate and approve articles of impeachment. They send it. The second step is to the House of Representatives. The House itself votes to impeach a president. So if the House votes to impeach, then it goes to the next step, which is a trial in the Senate. And so the House and the Senate both have authority, and the Senate votes to convict or acquit. In the last 2 impeachment cases, Richard Nixon was voted. The articles of impeachment were voted in the House Judiciary Committee, and he resigned because he knew he would be impeached and removed from office. In the case of Bill Clinton, he was impeached by the House of Representatives, but the Senate voted to acquit him. And they basically went through the exercise. They knew from the beginning there were not going to be enough votes, but they wanted to do it as a matter of principle or as a matter of politics.
Where are we at this moment?
At this moment, we're not even at step 1. And I would say that it's almost impossible for Donald Trump to be impeached as long as Republicans are in control of Congress. No party has ever impeached a president of the same party. And there's no inclination of the Republican leaders to impeach Trump. So right now we're at the point where there is an FBI investigation, and there is investigations by the Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Government Oversight Committee.
Laura, what is your take on the situation? Do you think it is unlikely, well, maybe it is unlikely at this moment, but do you think in the long run it is still unlikely for Trump to be impeached?
Well, Shin, I agree with Rick. This is much farther down the road. Some congressmen and women like to say, oh, we need to impeach the president, and it gets them a boost in the polls or maybe some good ratings. But right now, because the Republicans have the control of the House and the Senate, that's very unlikely. Now, the cases which it could happen is as the special prosecutor unfolds their investigation from the Justice Department, the FBI, and the House and Senate committees. Well, then, if that approval rating for Republicans goes down lower, and in the next midterms coming up in 2018, they are in risk of losing the House, losing the majority in the Senate. And if that happens, and that would sort of line up with the time after the other investigations are completed, then I could see a real threat for impeachment. But that's not until 2018 and not until the outcomes of these other investigations are complete.
Professor Whittington, you said earlier that we are in presidential impeachment territory if Comey's memo does exist, and it would be very damaging to the president. Now, Comey has agreed to testify at a hearing by the House Oversight Committee on the circumstances surrounding his termination. Would Comey's memo or his testimony offer enough evidence to charge President Trump of obstruction of justice or quicken the pace of any impeachment cases?
I don't think by itself it'll be enough, but there's sort of a continuing set of stories coming out revealing new actions and different actions that the Trump administration has taken, that President Trump himself has taken, that bolsters the kinds of concerns people have over the Comey memo. So we're still early in the process. We're still trying to figure out exactly what happened. There's lots of opportunities for the administration to put a better spin on it. But I think it's conceivable that if Republican voters, for example, turn against Trump ultimately, that even Republican congressmen would eventually turn against him as well.
Now, Laura, Committee Chairman Representative Jason Chaffetz has tweeted that the hearing has now been postponed with no future date because Comey wants to speak first with Robert Mueller, the newly appointed special counsel investigating possible Russian meddling of the 2016 election. What's behind the postponement? What difference would that make?
Well, Bob Mueller has made it very clear that as the special prosecutor, he is taking the lead on this. He's taking the lead on collection of documents and interviews prior to the Senate and the House committees. And so Bob Mueller, who's very well respected across both party lines in Washington, has already been at the FBI to collect information, especially about the memos that James Comey seems to have written after some very difficult meetings with the president, where he felt that the president was trying to get him to drop the case against Michael Flynn and others. So Bob Mueller's already looked at those memos. He obviously wants to speak with James Comey before James Comey goes up before the committee. And so it actually is, now that we have a special prosecutor, really the right order in which for James Comey to effectively tell his side, and for Bob Mueller, who's investigating the obstruction of justice, to really get the facts straight.
Right now, we seem to have several gates, let's say several cases inside. For instance, we have the possible collusion with the Russians, we have the firing of Comey and the intention behind the firing of Comey, and we have the leaking of classified information to the Russians. Rick, which one of these would be the most possible, the strongest case that could inflict real damage to Trump's administration?
Well, at this point, obstruction of justice is the one that's most difficult for him, because he effectively has said in TV interviews that he got rid of Comey because he wanted to make Russia go away. And also, Comey, according to leaked stories, has said effectively that Trump tried to obstruct the investigation, which would be obstruction of justice. Now, the one that would be the most damaging is the underlying charges, not the cover-up of the Russian meddling in the election, but if Donald Trump was aware and tried to get the Russians to intervene in an American election in 2016, if there is some evidence to the underlying charges, then that could even be an issue of treason, which would definitely be a high crime or misdemeanor impeachable offense.
Professor Whittington, now President Trump has been mired in scandals involving the Russians even before he took office, and the liberal media has spared no efforts to take him down. What's behind the feud between these two in your eyes?
Well, the Trump administration is behaving in unusual ways. They're not as experienced in handling politics and negotiating with other members of Congress and other parts of the executive branch as past presidential administrations have been. So in part they're stumbling around and making difficulties for themselves that other kinds of administrations with more experience probably wouldn't do. There's also policy disagreements, of course, between the Trump administration and even between the Republicans in Congress, but certainly between the Trump administration and Democrats in Congress, and that creates a lot of underlying political hostility.
Well, is that a reason really to go after him relentlessly because of his lack of experience? I mean, there is not even a chance, it seems, that's been given to Trump to do his job, Professor Whittington.
No, I think if it was just an experience, then it wouldn't. I think the problem of his inexperience in this particular context is that the administration is willing to say things, for example, to the FBI director that other administrations would just be sophisticated enough not to try to do, that they're much less sophisticated in how they want to deal with, for example, as reported last night, the Central Intelligence Agency and whether or not to get them involved in this investigation as well. I think other administrations would be much more careful about how they're handling those kinds of queries, and they'd be much more organized about how they present that information to the general public and to the media, and this administration just has not been very good at doing that.
You have been, Laura, you worked as an advisor to President Clinton. Is it normal for you to hear that so much have leaked out of the White House? How is this possible? This is really particular this time?
Well, it is very interesting, especially since we're in the first 4 months of the administration, Shin. You know, right now the White House is not staffed to the full level yet, which is very odd. And there is not a lot of those that have been around it before. You've got a lot of family members in there that don't have the political due diligence that other, not career politicians, but government and policy experts do have. You know, like my colleague was just saying, there's no reason for President Trump to think that he can reach out to the director of intelligence and the NSA and the FBI and say, hey, love for you to put this away and not investigate Mike Flynn, or this Russia mess is just a mess, nothing else. It just is not politics as normal. Now, politics as normal is something that, you know, his group of hardcore voters voted against. They don't want politics as normal. But there's a big difference between unforced errors and surrounding yourself with people that cannot say no to you, cannot put you in the right direction. And you know what, Shin? Now they're being put at risk because they're spreading falsehoods. They can't trust their president on the inside. And all of a sudden now you've got younger staffers that may have to lawyer up to be ready for an investigation into their part of whether it's collusion or disseminating false information.
Well, very quickly, Rick, what is your take on the feud between the liberal media and President Trump?
Well, it's clear he's getting bad press. There was a study, 80% of coverage of President Trump has been negative, 93% on CNN and NBC, the two most watched networks, at least in the past couple of weeks. And so there's no question he's getting negative coverage. Is it unfair? That's for us to debate. It may be true and negative. He says it's fake news, but the ratings are as high as they've ever been. The Washington Post, New York Times are selling more online copies than they've ever done.
Well, thank you very much, all of you. Rick Dunham, former president of the National Press Club, and Laura Schwartz, a former advisor to President Clinton, and Professor Keith Whittington of Princeton University. Thank you very much. And here is my first point. Although it's too early to tell whether an impeachment will actually take place, Trump has already set a record by having such a discussion so early into his presidency. And it's not a surprise. Trump was elected as the president for the divided states of America. The polarization of the American people, plus ever more entrenched partisan politics, makes today's scenario inevitable. It's foreseeable that this saga will drag on, and the liberal media will not relent in their pursuit to delegitimize Trump's presidency. Now, the current world #1 Go player, Ke Jie, is competing with the artificial intelligence program Alphago for a 3-round game from Tuesday to Saturday. The competition has been taking place at the Future of Go Summit in Wuzhen in East China's Zhejiang province. Now, during the first round on Tuesday, Ke Jie lost to Alphago by just half a point, the closest margin possible. What's the significance of this latest human versus machine encounter? Will Alphago very soon leave all Go players scratching their heads? I'm happy to be joined in the studio by Professor Song Sen, Principal Investigator from the Department of Biomedical Engineering and Center for Brain-Inspired Computing at Tsinghua University, and via satellite with Professor Raul Rojas from the Department of Mathematics and Computer Science at the Free University of Berlin. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Professor Song, now this is the second time Go players compete with machines in high-profile public matches. Last year it was AlphaGo versus Lee Sedol of South Korea, and Lee also lost 4-1. Since last time in South Korea, what progress do you think AlphaGo has made in terms of its intelligence?
Yeah, from what I heard from other people, it seems actually this time AlphaGo is much better than last time. Although he only won by half a point, what I said is it has kept the margin throughout the game. So I think it has really improved. From what I heard, actually, it's just the framework is the same as last year, but we'll see after the game. They'll probably reveal what engineering did since then.
Professor Rojas, are you surprised to hear the latest news coming out of Wuzhen that again AlphaGo is winning the first of the 3 matches? What is your take of this story?
Yeah, I'm not surprised because there is a law in computing that computing power advances by twice every 18 months, and in the case of parallel processors, it's even a factor of 10 every year. So every year, AlphaGo is going to be more powerful, is going to be able to compute more moves. So in just a few months, I think that AlphaGo is going to beat any human player in the world.
Wow. The reason, Professor Song, why AlphaGo has become so good is its ability to learn by itself. And it's interesting to see that Chinese player Ke Jie also tried to learn AlphaGo's strategy at the beginning of this game. But how powerful is the human learning process compared with the machine learning?
Well, I think it's actually interesting because AlphaGo was designed specifically by learning the humans. Right? Actually, the president of the DeepMind was actually had a degree in neuroscience, so he really studied the brain. So I think why the machine is winning is because it can compute so much faster than the human mind. So when it learns how the humans think and goes on to with vast amount of computing power, it can really surpass what human can do.
Professor Rojas, now this match is taking place after AlphaGo went on a 60-game winning streak online. Should we be worried if AlphaGo becomes invincible?
Yeah, AlphaGo will become invincible, but the real question is if we should be worried that this kind of achievements can be translated to other domains. For example, robotics, robots that can do the work that humans do in factories, and if they're going to substitute people working there. So I think that's a real issue. In computer games or in games in general, computers are going to be always better than humans when the speed advances. The real question is if they are going to be able to substitute all human workers.
Well, that's definitely going to take the fun away from board games, Professor Song. Isn't that the case?
Well, I don't think so, actually, because we can take the example of chess. I mean, computers beat chess years ago, right? But we still play chess. And actually, what happened is actually in the top games, the top chess players team up with computers to compete with each other. So I think that's probably what happened in Go as well.
Well, if AlphaGo wins all the 3 games this time against Ke Jie, or even just 2 out of the 3, does it mean that self-learning capability of artificial intelligence is so strong that no human beings can beat it anyway? Professor Rojas?
Yeah, self-learning is a very important thing. In the case of AlphaGo can just be playing against itself every minute, every hour of every day. So it can just be playing 24 hours. And if you want, for example, to build autonomous cars and you want them to drive better than humans, then you can do a simulation in the computer, and the computer can be driving essentially the 24 hours. Then afterwards, you can use a robot, you can use a car and put it into the highway and let the robot drive for millions of kilometers. So this self-learning capability is one of the most important features of intelligent systems.
Professor Song, does Alphago represent the highest technology of artificial intelligence nowadays? Why is there so much importance attached to this program?
Yeah, I think it's actually, at least in my example, one of them. The other one is probably the recent one where they won at the poker game. So I think Alphago was a significant advancement in the field of artificial intelligence. Go was considered to be unbeatable after chess was beaten. So that was kind of the last defense in the games for humans, for the complete information games. So why people thought it was unable to beat was because you cannot calculate all the outcomes. You have to use some kind of intuition.
Well, some commentators are saying human beings have disadvantages such as mood swings, whereas computers don't. What could be the disadvantage on the part of AI programs compared to human beings, Professor Rojas?
Well, the main disadvantage for computers is that they don't reason like we humans do. They don't take into account all the possibilities. They only can do what we have programmed them to do or what they have seen in the world. For example, a self-driving car, if it only drives in the highway, it can be a very good driver. But if you put that self-driving car in the city, it's going to fail because it has never seen pedestrians crossing the streets. And even if you put that autonomous car to learn in a city like New York or in a European city, and then move that car to a city like Mexico City, then it's going to fail again because it had not seen all possible scenarios. So humans are very good at generalizing, at learning from experience, but generalizing, going further than the data, computers are not so good at that.
Do you think it is possible one day that computers will acquire that generalizing capability as well, Professor Rojas?
Well, I think that computers are advancing very fast every year. Many people ask me if they will become as intelligent as humans in this century. I really don't think that computers will be as intelligent as humans in this century. I think that they lack common sense. So there are many things that you have never experienced, you have never seen, but you have what we call common sense. And if it happens to you, then you know how to react. Also, computers will never have something like empathy. They will never have something like humor. So human intelligence is very connected to the human body. So we are not just brains, we are bodies with a brain. And this is something that a computer is never going to be able to experience.
Professor Songson, you are a principal investigator from the Department of Biomedical Engineering and Center for Brain-Inspired Computing. Is there the possibility that we can develop some kind of software or hardware so that artificial or robots can acquire the reason that Professor Rojas just talked about and the empathy that Professor Rojas just mentioned?
Yes, I think it's possible, but it depends on what we call the emotion, etc. Because right now, I also study neuroscience. Right now, we don't completely understand what the emotional system of the humans are doing. But I think if empathy means if we mean that we understand what the other person is feeling or what state is in, I think that's totally possible for computers.
Mm-hmm. My question at this moment is: it seems that more and more we are ceding territories traditionally considered to be only capable by human. For instance, this Go game, and now we're seeing, okay, another territory lost to robots. Is there a boundary between artificial intelligence and human intelligence, Professor Rojas?
Yeah, there is a boundary, and the boundary I would draw it at emotions. So I'm really sure that computers can be much better than humans playing games, playing computer games, driving, operating a factory, moving machinery. That computers can do that better, but computers will never have a social experience, will never have emotions, will never experience society as we experience it today, so that humans will still have a place in this world.
Professor Song, what is the possible risks that you relate to the development of artificial intelligence in the near future?
Yeah, I think the basically two. One is that if AI is allowed to make decisions by itself, then that's a little dangerous. The other, especially if it would be dangerous if they're also networked, then one decision can propagate very fast throughout the network. Then it'd be too late to stop it if it's a bad decision.
Are these scenarios possible anytime soon, or are these just worries?
I think these are possible even without artificial intelligence. So I think it's really hard to keep these machines in a safe place.
All right, thank you very much. We have to leave it there. That was Professor Song Sen from Tsinghua University and Professor Raul Rojas from the Free University of Berlin. And here is my last point. Before the match took place, representatives of the programmers for Alphago said, whatever the outcome of the encounter, the ultimate winner is the human race. As it's unlikely that the program and technology will be shared freely among countries, the winner for now is going to be the company who created the program. On the other hand, the invincible program could take away the fun of the game, at least partially, together with the socializing elements. For millions of Go fans around the world, this sport will remain attractive precisely because of the human emotions and vulnerabilities involved. As Ke Jie, the Chinese Go player, said before the match, Alphago will never have his passion for the game, but will always be a machine whose only warmth comes from its CPU cooling. That's all for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, follow me on Twitter or visit our Facebook page using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN Live to watch our show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching.